Dr. Lizzie Burns, and I've been working on some resources to help you learn about viruses and vaccines while being creative. So having a little bit of fun at the same time. I've really enjoyed creating these resources, and I can't wait to see what you've been making with them as well. So this one is how to fold your own coronavirus. Clearly it's not real virus, but it's a little bit like origami, an actual virus. They're very beautiful, lots of beautiful little patterns. And so we've got the sheet, which hopefully you've printed out, and I'm going to be asking Chloe in a moment questions about this. So these drawings are of the spike protein, which is on the outside, the spike on the outside of the virus. And you can add some colour, and then I will show you in a separate video how to fold them up to make your very own virus-like spiky star. Also, the instructions as to how to make these spikes is a separate page too. And in another video, I will show you how to fold it up so that your instructions look a bit like kind of DNA, this sort of helix structure. And it means at the moment, if you just had the spikes, someone would find it very interesting, but they couldn't make their own. If you pass on the instructions, they could start making more of their virus-like structures. So hopefully you'll learn a bit about the biology while being creative and having a bit of fun. So I'm here with Dr. Chloe Myers, who is a virologist. She studies this kind of thing. And I'm going to do a bit of colouring in, so I recommend you do that while I ask Chloe some questions. So I hear, Chloe, why do some viruses have DNA in them and some RNA? Are they different?
Yeah, so they are. And in terms of why they do, it's just generally down to sort of how they've come about, how they've evolved over a number of years. But it creates differences in how they function, how they survive, in every sort of element of how they manage to replicate and generate more copies. So in general, in very, very general terms, DNA viruses can be bigger than RNA viruses. They tend to be a bit more stable. And by that, I mean, they don't break down as quickly as RNA viruses. And they quite often, in terms of how they replicate, they quite often either use their own or our enzymes to check. So when they do make copies of themselves, they quite often check those copies to make sure there aren't any mistakes. And that's where they differ. So RNA viruses are generally a lot smaller, and they replicate generally in a different place. So DNA viruses want to get into your nucleus of your cell, whereas RNA sort of start in the cytoplasm, which is the bit around the edge. And then because they are RNA, quite often they don't have their own enzymes, and therefore they make quite a lot of mistakes. And that's why we get so many differences. That's why we have the issues that we do with HIV and influenza, for example, because they're not able to check them when they make mistakes and change them. They create more viruses that are slightly different. And although quite often that means that they will die and they won't be able to survive, every now and then they make changes that actually makes them transmit better or escape from our antibodies. So they change a lot more.
So the coronavirus that we're hearing lots of, the SARS-CoV-2, is an RNA virus, so it can mutate more easily. But you were saying it's a little less. It doesn't last as long, so maybe that's kind of good that it's a little bit more with washing.
And it is slightly different so it doesn't change as much as influenza, for an example, because although it is an RNA virus, the difference with coronavirus is that it does actually have its own enzyme. It's called an RNA polymerase. It is able to check. So that's when I was talking about making, when it replicates itself, to check whether there are any errors and correct those, which is why it doesn't mutate as fast as some of the other RNA viruses like influenza.
So at the moment, what I've done is I've actually drawn the spike, how it looks like at the side, and I'm colouring them in. It's made these really nice patterns, and you'll be able to chop them up and then fold them into spikes. Do all viruses have spikes, Chloe?
Yeah, so they might not be as obvious as, obviously, the coronavirus has got those nice big spikes that people are familiar with all the different images that are generated, but they may not have they may not protrude as much as the SARS-CoV-2, but generally all viruses will have something on their surface, because these sort of proteins that are sticking out, which are needed to bind to the cells that they want to infect, they need to bind in order to sort of release their genetic information into the cell to make copies of themselves. And if there's nothing there to bind with the cell they want to infect, then they won't be able to do their job.
So a smooth virus wouldn't work. It needs those spikes.
It needs its spikes, yeah.
Which does make it look distinctive. So I hope you're going to enjoy making your own kind of spiky virus-like structure as well. Thank you so much, Chloe. You've answered so many questions, and I hope you're going to enjoy folding your own virus as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.